All right, so for everybody here, I'm going to stop share, find out. Somebody help me out. What is proactivity, or how do you sort of think of proactivity? So if you had to teach somebody, tell them what proactivity is, you learn this weird concept in a class you're taking at Cal Poly. What would you say, or what kind of things would you say? Who wants to help me out?
Um, just like taking initiative before you really have to.
Tell me more. So take initiative before you really have to.
If you have like a deadline or a group project or something like that, just getting started on it beforehand. And if you have like group members, like kind of assign them things to do and just try and get on top of it, even like before you technically would really need to do anything. Yeah. I like Liam's as well.
Yeah. Okay. So I see some folks are typing some things in the chat there and whatnot. So Liam, you had a comment about proactivity.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like I think proactive is like you're solving a problem before any of its consequences
Hmm.
come into effect, or you're matching your level of urgency and like tentativeness to a problem like to minimize externalities. So like say you have a homework assignment due, you do it as soon as possible
Okay.
because your likelihood of getting a late point reduction
Yep.
is reduced. Like it's like doing things a day before they're due, because if you seem to have a
Right.
problem when you start doing it, you have time to go and ask.
Yeah. So I guess I'm gonna say I think Liam and Sam are right, but a lot of that I think is the sort of the common perception of proactivity, right? And one of the things about proactivity, I think, is it really wasn't a very common term. Like being proactive wasn't a common term before in the 80s. Franklin or Stephen Covey wrote the book. Then everybody was talking about proactivity, and it's really kind of come to mean, I think, in common, if you say, hey, you need to be proactive, it means you need to do it before it's due, right? And that's the way that Liam and Sam are describing it. And it's true and correct. But I kind of think that proactivity from a seven habits standpoint is a little bit deeper, or has, there's some nuance there. And maybe it's almost, it's like even more generalizable. So somebody help me out with that idea.
Be more along the lines of like preventative action. So instead of like being able to identify a problem or something that you need to do, you have a certain discipline and routine
Yep.
that prevents those problems or tasks from even coming into fruition in the first place.
Mhm.
Like I know that like at least the book talks about like being proactive requires a significant level of discipline.
Yeah.
Um, and then those disciplines, at least how I interpreted it, was that discipline is preventative of problems, or not even problems, but like
Yeah.
things that you might have to put conscious effort or thought into handling when
Yep.
following discipline and routine of the seven habits productivity. You don't really necessarily even get confronted with those problems because they're already solved. So like
Right.
say for example, like I like a heart problem. If you were disciplined and you ate heart healthy foods, you wouldn't even have to recognize the fact
Right.
that you might have to prevent heart failure or problems or
Yeah,
something.
Liam. So I like that. So I think you're starting to get to it, like the idea that it's a discipline, right? I'm going to throw out, like, maybe it's a discipline of choosing, right? And I think it doesn't even have to really apply to problems per se, but it's something around, like, maybe a discipline of always sort of picking your battles, or deciding what you want to do. Somebody help me out and take me in that direction a little bit. So if it's, I kind of threw out sort of initially, it's like, be proactive means I choose, right? I didn't say about, you could choose to do it late. You don't have to choose to do it early, right? So it's kind of a discipline of choice. So the Franklin Covey folks think proactivity is here. So let's see, let's go next slide. So, habit one, the principles that are at play in this habit are the principles of responsibility, choice, accountability, initiative, and resourcefulness. And I think, you know, the discipline idea, you know, of you know, discipline and habit, you know, those could be sort of almost interchangeable terms. So the common paradigm is this is just the way things are. There's not much I can do about it. I'm kind of a go with the flow situation. And then the highly effective paradigm is I am free to choose and I am ultimately responsible for my happiness. So common practices, so these are the things you would see out there, you know, currently in the world, or maybe even some of these things are things that you sort of subscribe to, but you react based on moods, feelings, and circumstances. You blame, accuse, use victim language. One of the things that I'm about, I guess, all my career and in every organization I've been involved with, trying to stamp out this feeling of victimhood, right? I don't want to work in an organization of victims. I want to work with, people who are positively choosing to improve or make things better, right? I don't, practice of wasting time and energy on things you can't control and passing, negative patterns along to others. And the highly effective practices we want to do are pause and respond based on principles and desired results. Okay. Stop. What do I want to have happen in the situation? And then, what do I choose? Using proactive language. You want to focus on your circle of influence, the things that you can control. And then ultimately, if you're doing this sort of really well, you have the opportunity to become a transition person, first for yourself and for other people. All right. So this is where the assessment form comes in. So if you've got your assessment or you've got some feedback, you want to bring it to class every week so we can sort of talk about it. And if you go to the, let's see, page 19, a page like that, and then down at the bottom of the page, it asks you to do this. It takes a look at this your assessment score. So I want you to write the score that you got for this particular habit, and it wants you to identify, some opportunities for improvement or focus areas, things that, with regards to habit one, some of the things that maybe you did better or you need to do better based on your score on your assessment. I got this open now in Adobe Acrobat. So cover page, there's a little introduction on here explaining, how these scores work. So for each one of these habits, you're going to get a global average of all the respondents, how they scored you on this particular habit. You've got the score of how you scored yourself, how your manager. So there's a little thing you can have is done by your boss. Some of you don't have bosses, don't worry about that. And then, others or other people that you had sort of fill it out, right? And so these are the scores that you've gotten on the particular habit, right? So on the 7 habits, you might have an overall score, right? So this is my overall score on 7 habits is 81. You've got your private victory score. Looks like I only had 5 other people score me on this. And your public victory, right? So this is first 3 habits, second 3 habits, and then, this is, on all 7 habits all together, where I kind of scored myself. You've got scores by habit, 83 on proactivity, 82 on habit 2 for me. And then I've got, so it's a top 10 scores, right? That's what this said. Yeah. So top 10, Bottom 10. Oh no, these are my top and bottom 10. Okay, so I got top 10. So these are top 10. So each one of those questions on the assessment, I can be trusted to keep confidences. I got like 100% score on that. Yay me. On 13, question number 13, I have strong sense of purpose in my work. Scored 93, relatively high. So these are the things I did really well or was assessed really well on from my peers and from people I know. And then I've got some things that I really need to work on. I'm not doing so well. So my lowest score was I received negative feedback without becoming defensive. So that's something I need to work on, right? So I know that. So those are the top 10, bottom 10 questions. And then here's where we are. So we're talking about habit number 1. So you would open up this page in your assessment and take a look and see, oh, it looks like I got a global average of 83. I scored myself 55, lower than other people maybe perceive me overall, because others perceive me as being like at about an 89 level as far as these questions here. Then I look at all the questions. So there's questions for this were based on questions, let's say 1 through 8. And I look down here and I say, looks like of all these questions, my worst question here looks like I got a 73 on I maintain self-control even in difficult or emotional circumstances. And I might look as we go through this 7 Habits material, that might be a focus area for me. How do I do a better job of maintaining self-control, right? So that might be something that I could go ahead and work on. Probably wouldn't want to work too much more on my 92, take initiative to get things done, because I already have, pretty good score in that area. All right. And so this assessment goes on. So then there's habit 2, habit 3, habit 4, and we'll just hit those as they come due. I am going to go ahead and stop share and ask any questions about how we might use this assessment or what that assessment looks like.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
How long can I use this? So when I send the link to a friend and he responds in 4 weeks, does it count?
Yes, it counts. So that's what I was trying to explain, and it's better now that you've sort of seen it and what it looks like. So they're going to be scoring you on all these different questions. You can go to the link and see, oh, I've gotten 3 responses, and based on those 3 responses, here are all these scores. But then 7 weeks from now, somebody finally gets around to giving you some additional scores. It might sort of change your view on some of those things. You get some additional insights, but I don't know if it ever times out. It's probably in the fine print somewhere around where, at a certain time, they're going to kind of say, okay, that's it.
So the survey cannot grow. It's always a new document at the end. Or will this add the new information?
It'll just keep on adding the new information. So every time you click either update or download or something, it'll give you like all the information that was posted against you. Okay. Yeah. So that means like, before class every week, you might want to go and see if you got a new posting or, your information has been updated. So you're always using maybe the best information. Okay. Okay. So that's how you do that assessment. So at this point, take a little bit, think about, this idea of productivity, like with regards to the, what might you want to need to improve? The assessment is a good tool for getting that, but you can just knowing there's some things that you want to improve will make you a better appreciator of the material, right? Because you're looking for, I need to learn this stuff in general, but I got some specific things that I'm looking for to improve in my life. Okay. All right. So first, highly effective practice, pause and respond based on principles and desired results. All right. So notice these people carrying around these umbrellas. Okay, and let's watch this video and see what they have to say.
Monday morning, and it's raining. A gray, melancholy day. On a day like this, maybe we can be excused for feeling gray and melancholy ourselves. We get into a mood, and the whole day seems to go badly. Don't you feel better when the weather outside is great? But what if you could carry your own weather within you? What about the social world we live in? Don't you feel better when you're treated better? That's being reactive to what we could call the social weather, the social culture. When you carry your weather with you, you can choose to be consistent regardless of how people treat you. That's what it means to be proactive. Being reactive is the opposite of being proactive, not taking responsibility for our own life. You always see yourself as a victim of the weather, of your moods, of someone who has it in for you. Habit 1 is based on the principle that your life is the result of your own decisions, not your conditions, not what's happening around you. That's why Habit 1 is so foundational, so basic. Unless you practice Habit 1, you can never practice the other habits of highly effective people. Years ago, I was doing research in a library in Hawaii. While thumbing through a book, I came across an idea that changed my whole outlook. The author said something like this: between what happens to us, that is the stimulus, and our response is a space. In that space lies our power and our freedom to choose our response. And in those choices lie our growth and our happiness. This insight sunk deep into my heart. Even in the midst of challenging circumstances, we have this exhilarating power to choose how we will respond. For instance, the great Viktor Frankl, the Jewish Austrian psychiatrist imprisoned in the death camps of Nazi Germany during World War II, experienced unbelievable indignities and tortures. He was raised to believe that you are basically a product of your childhood. But while he was in the death camp, he began to observe some very interesting things. Different people reacted differently to the same circumstances. He himself experienced terrible things. Some of his own loved ones were killed. One day they stripped him, put him under lights, and performed experiments upon his body. At that lowest possible point, he discovered what he called the last human freedom, the power to choose your own response to any condition, to anything that happens to you. During his darkest moments, Frankl would visualize himself lecturing to his students in Austria following his release. He pictured himself teaching them about the very experiences he was having then. He came to believe that the most basic human capability of all is that between stimulus and response, man has the freedom to choose. Frankl later determined the thing that enabled survival in the death camps was not necessarily intelligence or survival skills, but a sense of purpose, a contribution yet to be made. This became the basis for his brilliant autobiography, Man's Search for Meaning. It's not what people do to us that hurts us. It's our chosen response to what they do that hurts us. As Gandhi put it, they cannot take away our self-respect if we do not give it to them. We must simply never build our emotional life around the weaknesses of other people. Otherwise, we give them permission to continue to mess up our lives. We give our future away. Several years ago, I was making a presentation on this subject of proactivity, and a woman stood up in the middle of my speech and started to give a speech on her own, spontaneously. She was filled with explosive learning and excitement. You could see in her eyes, her gestures, her body language. And then she sensed the inappropriateness of what she was doing. she sat back down. I could hardly wait until the break to talk to her. "What happened to you?" I asked. She shared her story. She said, "I'm the full-time nurse to an extremely miserable man. He doesn't even acknowledge me, let alone show me any form of appreciation." She went on to explain that this elderly man, entrusted to her care, was absolutely miserable and took his misery out on her. She was becoming more and more depressed and hated the thought of going to work each day and facing this irritable man. All of the other nurses felt the same way. They talked even of his demise, wished for it, hoped for it, while they were taking care of him. Then she said something to me. "For you to stand up there and suggest that I am choosing to be miserable was almost too much. But then, listening to you, I suddenly realized that I do choose to be miserable. Before, I believed I didn't choose it. He made me. But then I realized how dependent I am. I'd given my power over myself to him and his miserable behavior." "As I thought about what you were saying," she said, "I realized I had the power to choose and felt like I had been let out of prison. That's why I stood up. I could not contain myself. I just can't tell you what that means. This feeling of freedom is almost overwhelming. We have the power and the freedom to choose, to create our own weather each day. As Fulton J. Sheen once said, each of us makes his own weather, determines the color of the skies in the emotional universe which he inhabits."
Powerful story, right? And the umbrella analogy, the idea of like carrying your own weather around with you, right? Your own we go through life, we go through sort of culture and our day to day, but it's what's inside us. If we have this power of productivity, we choose, how we respond to that outside environment, and that determines our happiness, our growth. Right? So reactive behavior, when people are reactive, they allow outside influences, moods, and feelings to control their response. And this is the standard model that we think of when you're thinking of reactive behavior. Somebody cuts you off on the highway, and right away, you speed up, or you give them some hand gesture that's not always appropriate for a classroom, but that's the stimulus response. This is a behavior that was learned, or a model was developed, based on really sort of animal behavior studies, right? So you remember the story of Pavlov and his dogs. He got it so that, every time he would ring the bell, they'd feed the dog. And pretty soon they just had to ring the bell and the dog would start salivating, right? Stimulus response. But the thing is, we're human beings. We're more than that. We have the ability to use proactive behavior, right? So what we can do is we can insert a pause in between that stimulus and the response. And in that pause is your ability to choose, right? So you've got this freedom. So habit number one, right? Yeah, it's about, getting things done before they're necessary, or being, sort of a modern day term, proactive. But really, for me, it's about inserting this freedom to choose, or this pause, into your life. You know, always be a chooser. So there's a little demo I guess in prepping for today, I didn't sort of get it. But, you know, the little demo on this is, you know, do you want to be like the still water bottle on the left, right? So if I shake it, right, it still remains, you know, calm. Or do you want to be like the soda can on the right, whereas if you shake it, right, it becomes volatile. And the demo that goes in the workshop is, you know, you just insert that pause. So even if you shake that soda can, you know, you just tap it, you know, for about, you know, 15, 20 seconds, and then you can go ahead and pop that lid and it's still calm. So even if you are, you know, have some natural inclinations to be like the soda can on the right as a person, inserting that pause, that's the proactivity that we're ultimately looking for. Let's see. So before we get to that, I just want to share a little bit of story. This is probably my favorite habit. It's the one I've gotten the most juice out of in my life. I'm the father. I've got two daughters right now, Caitlin and Skylar. Caitlin's my oldest daughter. She's a jet engine test engineer, works for Pratt and Whitney in Connecticut. You know, both these daughters are now in their late 30s. But we did a lot of stuff with them. Oh, and my other daughter, Skylar, that's why I'm up in Bainbridge Island up here. She's now got two granddaughters, but she got her PhD in economics from the University of Washington, and she's now the chief economist for Zillow up here. So got two, you know, outstanding achievers as far as daughters go. And as they were younger and I was learning about the 7 habits, I would go back to my family and I would be teaching my family and my little girls, you know, about these concepts. And, you know, as you get older and, you know, you're growing as a family and in your relationships, and, you know, your views of the world, we would always sort of come back to these sort of 7 habits in different times. And there was a time recently where my daughter, Skylar, she was actually the number 3 or not the number 3, but the 3rd economist hired by Zillow. So was it back, you know, 10 or 15 years ago, I guess. And as Zillow was growing as a company, she was right there and she was, you know, very sort of supportive of that. But then she got in some conflict with some of the upper management in the company, and she was asked to leave, and she was kind of heartbroken about that. And you know, we talked about it. I think somebody mentioned Liam, you know, mentioned the you know the kind of crushing sort of feeling when you break up with a girlfriend, or you know, there's some sort of life trauma goes on. So this was a life trauma for Skylar. And we got back and we sort of talked about this habit of choosing, right? So there's a stimulus, right? You're kind of let go by a company, and then there's your response, right? Or there's a stimulus, there's a pause, you get to choose, and then there's your response. So Skylar, you know, chose to, you know, make this a opportunity for her. She was let go by Zillow, this company that she loved. She went off and started her own consulting business, and then worked for another startup company for a little bit, you know, doing very similar things that she was doing at Zillow. And then, and you know, in the process of that, you know, she actually she went out and she made me a bunch of little wristbands. I got about 50 of these things made, and you can kind of see this is what it is. I wear this all the time. It says on one side, I don't know if you can sort of see this. Let me move the toolbar out of the way here. Move down the bottom. But it says, you know, the last human freedom on one side of the wristband here. I don't know, So you go around here, last human freedom. And then on the other side, it says, I choose, right? And so these are just, those little common wristbands, you can kind of get them as promotional items and stuff all around. But I'm always wearing that. And it reminds me of, this ability to choose, and especially this discussion and little life event that Skylar had. And, just to sort of let you know, on the other side of this, so Skylar, was sort of off in the wilderness for a year or two. And then Zillow, went through the, I don't know if you guys remember or whatever, there was a sort of big thing where, they were trying to buy real estate and sell real estate, through the website. That kind of crashed. And the person who was the chief economist there, left the company, a little bit sort of discredited. And then all of a sudden the job opened up as chief economist at Zillow. And, the word went out, says, okay, we need a new chief economist. Everybody in the company says, you need to hire Skylar back, right, into the company, because they realized, what they lost. So Skylar came back into Zillow and was now the chief economist there, trying to turn things around and get the company back on track. But a lot of that was because of, her, 7 habits kind of capability. And that's the kind of thing that you want to have, that sort of resilience, proactivity, capability to choose in your life and in the things that you do. Okay. So a little bit of a personal story there. I get a little choked up a little bit whenever I tell that. So what we want to do is, think about like where your reactive behaviors come from. So we're not going to take time to do the exercise here in class, but this is a homework assignment. And maybe, 3 ways that you can get, think about, where your behavior came from, right? Your genes, I was born this way. So you might look at your, this, another way to say this is my grandparents did this to me, right? I'm this way because, my antecedents are, were this way. And I was born to be, reactive. It might be my, parents, right? This is, my parents did this to me. Or the third thing might be it's the environment, right? Everybody in this company is reactive, right? I got to be reactive just to counteract their reactivity, right? So I've got this reactive environment that I'm working in. So take some time to do that exercise and enter that information either here now, scribble down some notes for yourself, or put those in Canvas and put them in Canvas as an assignment, right? So this is the model: stimulus, pause, response. But you're going to apply your unique 4 unique gifts, right? You're self-aware, you've got imagination, you've got a conscience, and you've got independent will. So those are the things that you're going to bring into that space to, make your response and determine what you do. So there's another exercise. This is posted in there on Canvas, right? Is trying to think about how you might apply these unique human gifts to situations where you tend to respond reactively. So you get things, I always, every time, let's say, we'll go with sort of a classic meme, right? So if you know that, whenever you go to Thanksgiving dinner, and, you're sitting there with, your siblings or something, and there's a big sort of blow up at the table, right? You know that, that's a situation. How would you use self-awareness? How would you use imagination? How would you use your conscious or your independent will to kind of circumvent or, make sure that the blow up doesn't happen, or you don't get sucked into that sort of thing? Okay. All right. We're going to go ahead and do this little exercise, and we're going to use breakout rooms to do this. So what we're going to do, is I'm going to put you in rooms of 2. So you're going to be there with a partner. In round 1, this is going to be really quick. This is going to be like 60 seconds. You're going to tell the person in the room, one person's going to be the teller, the other person's going to be the listener. So you just tell the person in the room all the things that you have to do and all the must-dos that you have for the next week. All right, so there you are, all back in place. Let's see, do that to recreate. Okay, so good. So we got that. Let me, I was thinking I was going to reset up the rooms, but what we need to do is do a little bit of debrief. Let me go back in slides here. I wasn't supposed to show you this, but there we go. So, yeah, round 1. So I'm going to stop sharing. Let's see, stop share. There we go. Hey, want to hear a little bit about the people first who were listening. How'd that make you feel? So when you were listening to the person talk about all their must-dos and have-to-dos, what'd that feel like?
I must do. It seems more like tedious. There definitely seems to be like a level of like difficulty associated with the task, and also just like it's just like harder to listen to. Even though like some of the things that like the person I was listening to is saying like maybe like more recreational and like of a hobby when it's phrased in the way like, oh, I have to instead of I get to or I'm going to.
Right. Good.
It's like
yeah. So let's get one more listener in here. Who another listener? How that make you feel? Or I guess it's also how did it make you feel, and what did it make you think about the other person? You feel
I
sorry?
can go.
Yeah, go ahead, Lucas.
I found it interesting to learn how someone else, what kind of things someone else takes on.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting experience.
So
Learning.
was it interesting, or did it generate some empathy or some feelings in you, or what do you think?
I'd say it sparked some motivation to yeah, because for example, someone said going to the gym and that's something I find important as well. So it's just, another reminder to get in there and take care of our body.
Yeah, yeah. So there could be a twinge of inspiration. So how about now let's hear from a speaker or two, or an observer. What did you how'd that make you feel when you were talking about all the things you have to do or must do? How'd that make you feel? Speaker side.
It's a reminder for myself, and I figure out that I don't have a clear plan, just the big topics like sport and university and something for German university, but not that clear structure for every day.
Yeah. Yeah, so it sounds like a little bit of lack of clarity, maybe, but some big picture objective-y kind of stuff, right? Yeah, yeah. Did it make you feel anxious at all about some of those things that you didn't have that clarity, or?
Or there is a big paper you have to do for a German university. I now feel anxious about this.
Yeah, I imagine. Yeah, but Nick, did you start to say something about, were you a speaker? I was trying to read whose lips started to move when we sort of everybody.
I was not the speaker.
Okay.
That was me. I was
Okay.
just saying it made me feel like I should actually start getting productive right now. For example, I have a quiz at 6 o'clock in my 4 to 8 or my 6 to 8, and I realized I should probably start walking to my classroom to take that quiz.
Oh, yeah.
So that's one of them.
Yeah, so some of the stuff gets pushed back in your mind and you get all these have to do's or must do's up in there. So when we yeah, let's go ahead and do round 2. So round 2, let's see, I didn't share screen, right? So I got to do a share screen. So share screen. So let's do round 2. Here's my PowerPoint. There it is. Okay. It just got minimized. So I'm going to go to round 2 and let me, so many panels open here. Okay, so round 2. So now what we want to do is we want the same speaker and in the same rooms, and we want to convert the have to do's to I choose or I'm going to. All right. So instead of saying I have to do this or I must do this, you want to say I choose or I'm going to do this. All right. So I'm going to go in open room, same speaker, try it again with the I choose. Okay. So welcome back. I'm going to stop sharing here. So that might have felt a little bit different. So let's start this time with the speakers. How'd that make you feel? And
It was clear that I have to do the have to's before the I choose to.
yep.
So I have to prefer, or I have to do the stuff for school and whatever, or university before I go to gym and make some sport.
Okay. So did like saying I choose to go there before you do a sport, did that make you feel better about it or
It
worse
makes
or
the argument feels weaker.
weaker? Okay.
Yeah.
The choose to do feels weaker or the have to do feels weaker?
Choose to, because have to is like I have to do it, and choose to is
Ah,
like
okay.
there's another option.
I'm gonna, Alex, that's kind of interesting. I would sort of suggest to you, and you can, certainly make your own choice. I, that's like a paradigm issue too, right? It's the way you view the word, and maybe it's an English word, the way you view the English words, have to versus choose to.
Could be,
Right?
yeah.
Like you view one being stronger than the other. And I actually have the opposite, view of it, but
Oh.
That's different paradigms, right? How about somebody else? How they feel? Did saying I choose to do those things, did that make you feel different, better, worse?
It made me feel more in control of the things that I'm gonna do this week, which kind of made me feel better about the fact that about actually doing them.
Yeah, yeah. It'll generally, this idea of being sort of out of control or having this like massive to-do list that's acting on you and forcing you, and you don't know. Yeah, the in control feeling, man. I crave that in my life and in everything I do. How about the people that were listening to the people that were saying, or listening to like Alex or Haley? What do you guys think? How do you think about them when they're saying I choose? Did your perception of them change?
Seemed like there is more motivation than that. They kind of had like a want to do what they chose to do or like get done through the week.
Right. Yeah, you said, okay, this is a motivated person, right? That they're choosing to do that. How about other folks?
Seems like they're gonna get it done in a more timely manner, or like it's higher in their priority list.
Yeah.
So like if someone says like they have to do something, it's like they're gonna do it by the time that some external force is requiring them to do it. But when they choose to do it, it's like their next opportunity is their next move for like what they're gonna do. So I feel like you have more trust in the quality and timeliness of like their task.
Yeah, more trust in those people. I guess, so this is classes about personal leadership too. And you can think to yourself as well, would you rather be led by a boss who's saying, I have to do this, I have to do that? Or would you rather be led by a boss that says, okay, I choose to do this or I choose to do that, right? And so my argument is, I think we have a little bit more respect for the people that are choosing, right? Whether they're hard choices or easy choices or whatever, that kind of, gives us, a perception, right? Or a paradigm of how that person works or how they act. Okay. All right. So let's get back and talked about. So this was one of the ways or the things you'll sort of see or recognize in this is that this was a lead in. So we do a little exercise to a topic that we're going to talk about, the idea of proactive language. So I choose or I'm going to is an example of the use of proactive language. So we get you to try it out a little bit before you teach you a little bit more about, well, this is how it's supposed to work, right? So let's go ahead and watch this video on proactive language. And I think we're still good on this. Let's listen to this.
There's nothing I can do.
I can't change.
It's impossible. It's just the way I am.
I can't.
I have to.
If only they...
Our paradigms are both revealed and shaped by the words we use. If we see ourselves as powerless, it shows up in our language. Phrases like I can't, I have to, it's impossible, reveal our belief that we have no choice. And what's worse, they reinforce that belief. However, if we see ourselves as capable and able to effect change in our lives, this also shows up in our language. Proactive phrases like I can, I choose to, I will, show that we are not victims of our circumstances. More importantly, they reinforce that paradigm, allowing us to think and act in more powerful and effective ways. Reactive language can be very damaging to our lives. The latest research shows that negative reactive language actually releases dozens of stress-producing hormones and neurotransmitters in our brains, powerfully affecting our moods, reasoning, and communication. When we use reactive language, we feel worse about our possibilities and ourselves. Because it limits our thinking, reactive language often becomes a negative, self-fulfilling prophecy where we act in ways that justify our belief, creating a downward spiral of personal powerlessness. Reactive language also shapes how others see us. If we use the language of powerlessness, others see us as powerless, as victims of our circumstances, and as unable to move forward in challenging situations. As a result, we lose their confidence and trust. Proactive language, however, is entirely different. Research suggests that when we change the words we use to proactive rather than reactive language, we can actually alter our brain's chemistry and functioning in positive, helpful ways. We actually feel better and think better when we use proactive language. Consistent proactive language affirms our capacity to choose. It reflects and reinforces a proactive approach to life. It's a solutions mindset that creates an upward spiral of more effective thinking, doing, and results. Ultimately, proactive language lets others know that we do not see ourselves as victims of circumstances. Their confidence in us grows, and they are more willing to lend us their support and energy. It helps us move from impasse to insight and action. Proactive language is the language of leadership. By choosing the words we use, language becomes a powerful tool of effectiveness. Proactive language opens our minds to the space between stimulus and response. It allows us to see the possibilities, to alter our circumstances, increase our influence, and ultimately to improve our lives.
This is the idea of proactive language to reinforce our use of this habit, right? So you're always trying to get into a using the language of proactivity or choice, not only affects how you think about yourself and your sort of control, as Haley was sort of talking about of the situation, but also affects how others perceive you, right? Are they perceiving you as the person who could potentially be a friend or a leader, or are you portraying yourself as a victim, right? I have no control over my circumstance. So reactive language, I can't, it's not my fault, I have to, I have no other choice, they won't let me, there's nothing we can do. Might be examples of reactive language. Proactive would be, I can, I'm sorry, I choose to, let's look at all our options, I will get this done, there must be something we can do, right? You're not a victim your circumstances. Go forward on this. Okay, so we're gonna skip this little exercise, but it points to another thing that's in your kit. And this is down in my bag at my feet here. I should have put this out on my desk before. All right, stop bending down. I choose to take my time and get this. Here's the book I'm looking for. Yeah, here we go. So if you get out, if you've got your kit, so one of the things in the kit is these things called the skill cards, right? And that's the little thing that they're pointing to here. So skill cards. So it's broken into sections. The first section, you know, are little folks with the umbrellas, right, carrying their own weather with them, and it's a way to practice using either reactive or actually a way to practice proactive language. So we want you to practice the right language, and it'll give you different situations. And then on the back of the card, there's a way to, there's a kind of some hint on what the proactive and reactive language responses might be to that situation, okay? And so you can do this little exercise with somebody else. I think we've got an assignment on Canvas. We've got to kind of do one of these and provide some responses. So we're going to skip over this for tonight in this particular class. But this introduces your little skill card book. Okay. So finally, the last concept that we're going to talk about tonight, or we might be able to get into transition person. Let me see if I can get through to this. So focus on your circle of influence is the other is one of the other practices, right? So this might be your paradigm or it is a paradigm of how maybe the world works, right? So you've got some sort of circle of influence. These are things where, you know, you have the ability to change and control, or yeah, some degree of control on your circle of influence. But there's a wider sphere of concern or circle of concern, things that, boy, you know, I'm worried about the economy, but I really can't do much about it, right? So you get this sort of larger circle of concern, and this might also be sort of within your workplace, right? So within your department, you can do things. You're concerned about what the bigger company's doing, but you know, really sort of within your department or within your team is the place where, you know, you can get something done, right? So that's the concept there. So you can take a look at this exercise, and we ask you to do this on Canvas. So list some of the things that were sort of within your circle of concern or circle of influence, and then what are some of the things on your wider circle of concern. All right. The circle of influence where you're on, this is where you're proactive. These are places where you can make changes, right? And it tends to be that those wider things, the things you have no control over, you know, would be more reactive. You know, one of the things you don't really have a lot of control over, you know, other people's perceptions, or, you know, maybe other people's behavior, all those reactive people around you, right? You might not have a lot of, you're concerned about it. You don't necessarily have control, but you can control what you do, right? Or you can control maybe, or have some influence over, you know, what your close friends or close associates, or at least, you know, your team does, if you can't control like the larger environment. Okay. One of the dynamics that happens with this, so if you focus on your circle of the circle of concern, the wider is, it actually reduces. So that, you know, people start to see you as reactive, and you're going to have less influence, right? So what you want to do is you want to focus on your circle of influence, and that's going to grow, and you can actually then affect things that before were out of your reach. Okay. So, so there's an exercise you're going to do on Canvas, circle of influence challenge, identify a circle, a place where you can exert some influence in a challenging situation, right? So you're going to identify the areas of concern, the inner areas where you can influence, and what actions might you take in the next week within your circle of influence, right? To make a difference. Let's see. So finally, this is a transitions person. This is a video that I'd like you to see, and it kind of rounds out the training for habit 1. So let's go ahead and get this. This is being a transitions person. And Nick, could you go ahead and read this slide to us?
Transition person, someone who breaks unhealthy, harmful, abusive, or ineffectively learned behaviors and replaces them with proactive, helpful, effective behaviors.
Yeah, who wouldn't want to be a transition person? Okay, so we're looking at a situation, there's past patterns or there's a current behavior within your class or within your family or whatever. Then there's you, the transition person, and then there's future positive patterns, right? So let's go ahead and watch this video, and this will be a way for us to wrap up tonight's class. All right, so I will be here after the video. If you stick around, we can chat a little bit about it. But this is the majority of the content delivery for habit number 1.
My home country, Uganda, is a very beautiful country. I like the people. I like the weather. It's really very wonderful. Football in this country, the moment you start moving, then the first thing to kick is a ball. I tried all my life to make sure that I played professional football. That was my dream. I really worked for it.
We are starting training, let's say by 10 a.m. But at around 8 a.m., you found Stone on the pitch. He said, I want to practice to become perfect on it.
Then, when I was 18, I started playing professional. They invited me for the national team. And then, just in a fraction of a second, my dream was shattered.
A defender came from behind and tackled him.
He just trapped my leg and turned it around. They took me on the side. The doctors told me I needed to go for operation. I knew it was over. You strive to climb the ladder, and the ladder has been broken. It's very painful. That night, even sleep could not come. And in the morning still, I was still crying. I had worked for this thing for so long. And now this man comes from behind and hit me. Inside me, there was some bitterness in me.
In Uganda, we come from a culture where revenge is accepted.
It would have been acceptable or expected of him to do something against the person who hurt him.
It was not easy. Inside me, of course, definitely, I felt so bad. I remembered my mother telling me, if anything happens, learn to forgive and forget, because you cannot change it. I said, I have to forget that, the past. And I forgave him. Now you're trying to think, now what can I do next?
In Uganda, we have many challenges caused by corruption and caused by all these wars that we've had, and that has resulted in many kids being onto the streets.
They do not have parents, or because of poverty in their homes, they may not be able to continue with school, and yet they are not able to find work.
When I got injured, I opened my eyes wider. I saw the boys just loitering around. Then I said, what can I give? The idea came to me now. I think I can still be in football, but in another way.
When I first met Coach Son, I was staying on the street When you are a street kid, you sleep outside. You can't get access to food, to school. You are just on your own.
Abamu be nali mbeera nabo baafa biseera ebyo eby'entalo ebyaliwo. Kale ne mbeera nga mu mbeera gye ndimu nga mbeera n'emikwano gyange bwe tutyo kubaawo bwe tutyo.
There's so much thieves, they take drugs. I was just there doing bad things like that.
People saw them as thieves, pickpocketers, or people who would not amount to much, but coach would see something in them.
When we started, boys just came, and the number started increasing because their friends used to tell them. Now we have more than 5 teams playing the league. We train every day, and whether it rains or shines, we have to play. Because if you let them go, then you are sending them away to trouble.
He opened up a clubhouse whereby some people who did not have a place to stay could come and stay in there.
This clubhouse helps a lot. It acts as a home for the boys. While we're here, we can influence them positively so that they can become the people we want them to be. The goal is to have the football as a magnet, bring them in, and then teach them principles. The most important principles I want to teach the boys are love and forgiveness. Forgiveness will help you reach your potential.
Coach's message of forgiveness, for me personally, helped me to get rid of the many hurts and the many things that were weighed on my heart.
In Africa, some wars come around which are uncalled for, just because maybe one tribe never forgave another. And now they see that they have the power and freedom to choose their response.
Stone lives in the middle of a slum. He chose to live there because the kids that he wants to inspire are right there.
That gives him a platform to talk to them because they feel like he's their neighbor. He understands the challenges they are facing.
Ate coach yatuyigiriza bintu bingi ozaayo kugeza kutulaga muntu nga balina okuba ng'asuubula.
Bwe twalinga nga tuli mu kisaawe naye nga tulinga abali awaka era kyenkana twalinga waka ng'atusomesa embeera gye tulina okweyisaamu so si awo mu kisaawe wokka.
We have had 5 players join the national team and some play professional football. But that doesn't matter so much because the most important thing and goal is for them to become good men, good husbands, and good fathers.
I worked hard to be as you see me here. If I didn't meet Stone, it wouldn't be like this. I think I wouldn't be with my family.
I don't want this thing to die when I leave. I want the thing to continue. I want people to continue influencing others and let the message spread. Every boy I meet, I look at him as my son. It doesn't matter whether he's on the street or he's in prison or he's in a home or he's on a football ground. It's my responsibility.
Okay, so that was a little video about being a transition person. So maybe, you could be a transition person for others or even just for yourself, right? Past behavior to new behaviors and paradigms for the future. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. We're over, so this is your opportunity to escape. Thanks for, staying to the end of the movie. That's always nice. If you need to head out, just give me a little wave. If you want to stay around and chat a little bit, happy to do that also. But thanks for being here. So we got 40 people in the class. You guys are going to have to explain all these concepts to all the other students. There's plenty of people out there you can teach. Start with the other 35 that weren't here tonight. So we'll see you guys later. Have a good rest of your week. And there we go. See you guys later. Bye-bye.